How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Barely There podcast. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me on Twitter at @PodGuyDuke. As always, I'm joined by the Ayatollah of Capicola, Lucas Perfetti. You can follow him at LucasPerfetti46. Be sure to follow the podcast as well at Barely There Pod. So today we have quite a few things we got to cover. Obviously, we haven't been around in a week, so we have the Chicago Bears versus Seattle Seahawks cover. We have some top players who've really kind of shown out throughout the entire training camp process and the entire preseason process. A lot of pick performances last Thursday. Obviously, we're going to talk about ESPN and how they basically just shit can the Bears completely because ESPN really likes to do stuff like that, especially when it comes to the city of Chicago. We also have a former offensive coordinator who did a masterful job at putting his foot in his mouth this week in regards to the Chicago Bears offense. And overall, we have quite a few things we got to cover. We have an all-pro linebacker back in practice, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So on Thursday, and Lucas, I'll let you jump in here in a second, but I really want to jump on this because it was kind of my guy that I was kind of jumping towards. But Tevin Jenkins, if anybody has taken an opportunity and just absolutely ran with it, Lucas, it has to be Tevin Jenkins at right guard. Made a lot of incredible plays. For an offensive lineman, obviously you can only make so many quote unquote incredible plays. But if you've played as much offensive line as I had to, because I was a fat kid growing up, you know that Tevin showed up to ball, and he looked pretty good next to Larry Borom at right tackle. There's going to be a lot of questions about who's going to be starting right tackle moving forward. But Lucas, how are you feeling about Tevin Jenkins? A lot of aggressiveness up front, a lot of seizing of opportunities, if I do say so myself. How are you feeling about the whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I said it in our stream, or what do you call those, spaces on Twitter? I feel like I'm a fucking boomer for saying that. What do you call those? No, but
they're called spaces.
Yeah,
and, we have been doing just before you jump in. We have been doing spaces pregame and halftime show. That might be something I end up doing into the regular season. We've been getting a really good response on it, and I just want to say thank you to anybody who joins in. But go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah. So, I said in our space, like, this is the most ideal situation possible is for Tevin Jenkins to work out. Like, right guard was a huge question mark. We kind of talked about, I kind of mocked, like, why are we worried about right guard when we don't know who's playing left tackle, right tackle, center after Patrick gets injured. So I mean, it's ideal. I think he played well. I think he definitely has played a lot better than Michael Schofield, where I would feel good about kicking him to center and taking Mustipher out. He's obviously played better than Mustipher in terms of keeping Michael Schofield in. It's a no-brainer. And then I know pedigree was one of those things that Bears blogger was talking about. There's definitely a lot more pedigree in Tevin Jenkins being on that line and honestly making that transition than there is for anyone else. It does give you a better feel going into the season, especially for Justin Fields' health, especially for the running game. As much as the Bears want to be a run-heavy team, the offensive line has to do their job, even if it is in a system that is going to make things easier for him. So I think he won that starting job. I think it's pretty clear at this point, clear as day. And then you're kind of cooking with gas a little bit. You got white hair, Tevin Jenkins, and Lucas Patrick, who is supposed to be a significant upgrade and really a core piece in moving forward and building this offensive line back. So, I mean, it all feels good. We got to see it against first teams consistently, which I think we're going to get to do this week.
Yeah, so just kind of scaling back a little bit, because I did forget to bring up the Bears won the game 27-11. They were definitely getting the ball moving on offense, with the defense really kind of sticking strong until the end of the game. But kind of jumping back into the Tevin Jenkins point, I was really talking it up last week of, like, really just seizing your opportunity. Like, this is a guy who just a few weeks ago we were wondering if he was going to even be on the roster, and it turns out that he's potentially our starter at right guard, a position that he hasn't played in the NFL yet, a position that according to him, he wasn't even totally prepared to play until the day of. You know what I mean? So that's definitely something that it's impressive. Honestly, it doesn't feel like it's something that was handed to him. It felt like he really had to battle for this. It felt like he really had to buy into the system. And it seems like it took a couple players a little bit of time to buy into the system, but it seems like once they have, they've really taken off. I know Jalen Johnson just said the other day when he was in an interview that he didn't buy into the whole hits thing right off the bat. It took him a minute, but now that he has, he's completely all in. And he seems like a guy who's very happy with his position on the roster. So that could be something that Tevin's kind of doing currently. You know what I mean? Like, you listen to him talk during the press conferences this week. You listen to him talk in interviews and get his quotes. He sounds like a guy who is very aware of his situation. You know, he's very aware of the trade rumors that were surrounded around him, and he's very aware that he has a giant opportunity in front of him that he's currently taking advantage of. You know, the fact that he wasn't even practicing a couple weeks ago, like when we were at camp, Lucas, I remember us looking for him. And even the second time I went to camp the next week, I didn't see him. The fact that he's now our starting right guard and like no major injuries have happened at that position, that really just goes to show that Tevin Jenkins has come into camp and earned everything that he's been given so far.
Yeah, knock on wood real quick, fat man. No reason to jinx the Bears. If something terrible happens, just blame Duke at that pod guy Duke. It's his fault. No, but I mean, kind of to backtrack a little bit too, he had a pretty significant interview today where he did talk about, you know, that battle. And it's not, people expect, you know, you mentioned Jalen Johnson taking a little bit of time to buy in. Like, so many people look at these players as robots, not even giving an opinion on the Aaron Donald situation, but very current, really just happened a couple hours ago. Not a bright idea by the NFL to have the former Super Bowl runner-up facing the former Super Bowl champ. There's obviously going to be some animosity. I'm not shocked that a fight broke out, but like, everyone's talking about Aaron Donald like he's the worst person on the planet. It's like, man, you expect everyone to be robots. Like, these kind of things happen in football practices all the way down to the high school level. It's not anything that anyone should condone or promote, but like, I feel like there's so much more of a guttural reaction. And to me in general, like, I just think Tevin Jenkins did some soul searching is what it sounds like. It sounds like, you know, because where there's smoke, there's fire, right? They're not going to announce that the Bears are trying to trade Tevin Jenkins for no fucking reason at all. Like, it got leaked by either the Bears a little bit or it got leaked by Tevin Jenkins camp a little bit. Like, someone wanted some movement there. He was clearly unhappy. I think that's part of why he was put on PUP. And I think, like, you know, he talks about how he had to go through this like internal battle with himself and how he's constantly growing and stuff. You know, and David Montgomery even acknowledged that, like, mental health is a real thing. If you need help, definitely reach out for it, because it's a very real thing. And Tevin Jenkins really did open up some insights to us, and I think we learned a lot more about Tevin in this interview that he just had. I would recommend going and watching it than we have really going through his whole rookie year and up to this point. Like, he did obviously still a little guarded because people were pressing him about trades and stuff like that, but definitely revealed kind of a lot about how he's been soul searching and stuff like that. So, you know, props to Tevin Jenkins, and he deserves this spot. You're right. Like, even if it was a rocky road going to it, even if it was leaked because the Bears wanted, you know, to motivate him or to see what was out there, like, right, in terms of what he can get for a trade if he wasn't buying in, like, whatever it is, he seems to be cool with playing for the Bears this year specifically, and possibly moving forward. Like, he even said, getting tape out there is getting tape out there. Don't forget, like, he didn't have a great rookie year after the injury, all that stuff. He drops in the draft. Like, you have a limited shelf life. So I think he kind of understood too, and maybe was, you know, had to do a little bit of humbling in terms of soul searching too. Like, hey, I'm going to take this quote unquote demotion and I'm going to fucking smash it in the face. And then I'm going to go somewhere and either be a tackle for the Chicago Bears or somewhere else. Like, maybe that's his ultimate goal. Right. But yeah, I think overall it's just a great thing in general with kind of the arc of Tevin Jenkins.
Well, see, and the biggest thing, you know, outside of just his performance on Thursday, where, you know, I really can't just allude enough that there were times, even with the first team, where he genuinely looked like the best offensive lineman on the field. Like, he looked like that guy we drafted that should have been drafted in the first round. That
everyone was excited about. Everyone was excited he got drafted.
Yeah, and exactly. And I feel like people forget about that, and they definitely forgot about it, you know, that hype that kind of surrounded him as we were going into training camp. But like, the thing that I like about Tevin in his press conference today compared to his press conferences maybe a couple weeks ago or whatnot is he's very just fluid. He's very accepting of his situation. You know,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's not one of those things where like he has to necessarily watch too much of what he says. Because I thought he was actually very open when he did bring up the fact of like trade rumors. Like, he did actually address that and say trade rumors that came out of his mouth. So like, that in itself is impressive. And it kind of shows like he's just being very straightforward. Like, he sees this as an opportunity, regardless if he's going to be with the Chicago Bears long-term or not. He's made it made it sound like he wants to be, but like at the same time, he seems very understanding that the NFL is a business, and that if he doesn't quite take off with this right guard spot, that even if he doesn't end up starting, or even if he's not the starter all season, he wants to get tape out there. He wants to be able to just get comfortable playing in the NFL. And, obviously he's shown flashes. He even showed some flashes last year of what the player he can be. And he definitely showed some on Thursday. And we're going to be looking on Saturday for him to kind of bring it all together for this final push going into the regular season. But like, I really like how Tevin's handling himself right now. I can't get over the fact that he wasn't practicing a couple weeks ago, and now he's lining up as a starter, and he looks like he belongs there. You know what I mean? You have to remember, this is a coaching staff with Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, who would refuse to name the starters on the offensive line the first few weeks of training camp. They would refuse to name starters really at any position. They would talk up guys, but they wouldn't say for sure who is starting anywhere. When Eberflus was asked early on about the entire process with every player on the roster, he said, hey, man, we need guys to come in and earn their spots. And that makes me think that Tevin Jenkins is doing a good job at going in there and earning his spot. He's not being pushed into something that the coaching staff isn't comfortable with. He's not being pushed to the moon because of his draft status or because he's on the trade block. He's being pushed in there because hopefully he gives the Chicago Bears the best chance to win.
I mean, and how many times just in general in your life, like while you were playing, we didn't play for that long. These guys have gone an extra 4 years of college, sometimes 5. And then now they're into their pro career. Like, how many times did you be like, man, dude, is this shit all worth it? Right. Like every single day I could never go after school and hang out with my friends, or like go play a pickup basketball game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you love it. And like, but sometimes you're just like, man, dude, like, is this really, you know what I mean? Do I really want to still be doing this? I feel like every player has to, like I said, they're all human beings. Like, and people make mistakes, people change their mind on things, people go through fucking evolutions. All of us do. Right. So I just think I'm glad he seems like he's in a good place. And that's huge for the Bears. And especially like when you look at someone like Roquan Smith coming back to practice, obviously you guys know how much we love Roquan Smith, how much we think he should be here, how much you think he should be extended. It's almost like it's all coming together at the right time. Right at the perfect time to kind of silence some of these, I don't know, haters from ESPN, I guess you would say. Like, we got to definitely, if we're on the game right now, we got to talk like that. We can leave off the coward stuff until later, but like, you had a tweet that popped off pretty hardcore. And I thought it was a great encapsulation of the game. So do you have it in front of you, or do you tell us?
No, I mean, I kind of know it from my head, and it was just the way the commentary was going. The way my tweet read was ESPN was not prepared for the Chicago Bears to look this good. Like plain and simple. They were fully prepared for maybe Seattle not being the greatest team in the world, but like guys like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, like they were talked about so much in the pregame show. It was disgusting. Like it was ad nauseum, where they would just continue to talk about either how much potential Seattle has to be a decent team this season, or anytime the Bears would start making a run, which by the time it hit like end of the first quarter, beginning of the second, you kind of see that the Bears were starting to take control of the game. That's when you started hearing, well, Seattle still has a long way to go. Seattle still has a long way to go. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I heard that. So like,
it's just how much they were highlighting too, like Seattle's players, that really bothered me. Like, they were talking about their edge rusher and how incredible he's supposed to be, and how huge fucking DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are going to be, and how great of weapons they are. And it's like, every other conversation has always been about the quarterback. So like, what is it? Is it Louis Riddick, like, and his love for, because I'm going to just throw the fucking tinfoil hat on right now. Is it his love for Matt Nagy and how he thinks the Bears treated him, or whatever happened with Matt Nagy down the line? Like, is that why this happened? Because he was on the broadcast. It's very clear that there's been a battle between Bears fans and him. And then Dan Orlovsky piles on, who used to be, I mean, I'm sure he still is a Mitch guy. He's a guy for any quarterback that's underperforming, because, I mean, that's Dan Orlovsky. Like, he's gonna defend those players no matter what. But like, it was just very strange how much they were talking about how bright the future is for Seattle and this and that. And like, everyone always only talks about, you need a fucking elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's what everyone talks about. You need a Josh Allen. You need a Patrick Mahomes. And the Bears have potential in that with Justin Fields, but all they talked about is how dog shit the things are around him. Listen, I've complained about how they haven't surrounded him enough. But like needing 2 fucking number 1 caliber receivers is not something a quarterback needs the most. Like that is, I'm sorry. Like, yes, it will help. It will do things. People forget Josh Allen was on the 3-year plan. Just because the Bengals turned it around and their fucking superstar quarterback tore his ACL and they still ended up in the top 5 and were able to get a generational talent at wide receiver doesn't mean that's the only formula and way to go. Like, look at Josh Allen. He did not get surrounded with guys till his fucking 3rd year. And his 1st and 2nd year, dude, he had nobodies around him. And it's like, at some point, you have to think the media has an agenda against the Chicago Bears because they never get any love. And to look at the Seattle Seahawks and how they've drafted in the last few years, them giving away 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams, like some really bad fucking moves, and them losing the entire heart and soul of their fucking team and trying to spin that as a, hey, this is a great opportunity for their younger guys to take leadership roles. No, fuck you. You have Geno Smith as your quarterback. The NFL knew Geno Smith wasn't a fucking starting caliber quarterback 6 years ago, bro. He's a backup, and you're having him compete with Drew Lock, who I think he's got a little bit of moxie, but we know it. Like Drew Lock is not going to be that elite quarterback ever. I still think he could sling it a little bit. You know what I mean? If I'm them, I'm starting Drew Lock for sure. Like I think he could swing it a little bit, but I don't think wide receivers are going to overcompensate so much that you have to fucking spin this like, wow, the future's so bright for what's it called, and no one knows what the fuck is going on with Chicago. Like I just thought it was a really direct attack.
We'll see, but that's the thing though, and that's the issue with kind of the commentary crews that you get, especially when you don't have a player in there that's really done anything relevant in the NFL. Like, I mean, say what you want about, say, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who I have just I loathe both of them, honestly. But at least when Troy Aikman talks, like, at least you can kind of go behind the idea, like, all right, this guy, Super Bowl winning quarterback, you know what I mean? When you have Dan Orlovsky, Louis Riddick, and whoever the hell the third guy was in the crew, you have like
that fucking guy that was getting
you have like no meat and potato guys at all. Like you have nobody in there to talk about how well Tevin Jenkins played. You have nobody in there to talk about how Al-Quadin Muhammad was all over the field the entire game. You have nobody in there to talk about Kyrus Tonga just plugging holes up front the entire game. I didn't hear Jack Sanborn get talked about nearly enough, and he had 7 total tackles, which was tied for second most of the entire game. Like they were so busy talking about A, the quarterbacks, and B, wide receivers, and just all these like sexy position players that there was just absolutely nothing of substance. That was the thing that killed me the most. Like I can handle people in the national media taking shots at the Chicago Bears. That's fine. But like when I'm listening to a commentary crew who's giving me absolutely nothing about the actual intricacies of the game, that's where they lose me very quickly. Like if you can't tell me that Tevin Jenkins sliding over on a pass rush with Larry Borum basically in sync and being able to stop a pass rush on a linebacker not blitzing in the middle but instead an extra guy coming off the corner, if you can't tell me that as a commentator, I'm probably going to try to mute you. And that's why a guy like, say, Greg Olsen, who is going to be probably a Hall of Famer one day, is someone I'd much rather listen to on Sundays because he can give you the deep dive of the game. He knows the game, like playing even on offense against the defensive side of the football. You know it that much better. And when you have a Dan Orlovsky in the booth, sure, dude, he's talking about quarterbacks. That's great. But like that only gets so far, man. And by the time you hit the first hour of the broadcast, you've already heard the talking points. And you don't hear about guys like Coley, Tevin Coleman, who has been having just an absolute tear of a preseason because they look at his name on the in the pregame meetings and they're like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't really want to bother talking about it. And that's the thing is Chicago doesn't have a lot of names that pop off on the paper, you know, outside of the Justin Fields, you know, Dave Montgomery, the Cole Kmet, the Darnell Mooney. So when they see everybody else, that's when they start kind of going like, oh, well, I'd much rather talk about the Seattle Seahawks because we watched them more because we watched Russell Wilson. And that's the reason he was on our network. That's the only reason that they fucking were so prepared to go in on Seattle.
Yeah, that star sell. Like I understand that aspect of it, but why was John Madden the most beloved and famous broadcaster that really changed the game forever, right? Like he fucking kept it simple, but also showed you those intricacies of the game, and then was obviously a larger than life character that everyone fucking loved, right? But everyone fucking remembers him scribbling, well, maybe not, dude. We're kind of old now at this point. Like maybe everyone doesn't remember, but go back and watch some John Madden highlights. He would literally just scribble all over the thing. By the end of it, you really did not know what the play was, but as he's going through it, you're like, okay, this guard pulls. And he also highlighted offensive linemen all the time. And the funny thing is they were highlighting the shit out of the Seahawks offensive linemen, and they were getting the piss blasted off of them. Like the Chicago Bears defensive line was overwhelming the Seattle Seahawks offensive line, who's had a pretty suspect offensive line for years now. So that's my thing. It's like, I get it, but there are people that I think deserve that opportunity so much more than these guys. I mean, what they got replaced, didn't they, on Monday Night Football? Like now they just have the preseason. I believe
it's Buck and Aikman now.
That's what I'm saying. And like I would prefer Buck and Aikman over Riddick or Orlovsky, and I don't even know that guy, but
I feel like that says a lot, doesn't it? Because I don't know how you feel
either
about
Buck or Aikman. No, but like it is better. Plus, Aikman's good for a soundbite every game, soundbite or two about how things are coming in hard or some shit like that.
Yeah, let me tell you, partner, they're coming hard. They're coming hard on the rear end of that center.
Yeah, no, and like this isn't even us trying to, I guess, fucking say the Bears are going to be incredible this year. Like I don't think that. I guess we can give our official record predictions next episode before the season starts. But like to paint Seattle in such a light, maybe we should look into see, does Seattle have a few primetime games and the Bears only have like one or two? Like, is that part of it because they are trying to sell Seattle? Because Seattle's going to be dog shit this year. There's, in my opinion, they're the runner up for the worst team in the league. And it's just so crazy to me that you are able to highlight everything other than the fact that there's a huge question mark at quarterback and they lost their two biggest leaders and were able to spin zone that. So, they even talked about the Roquan Smith situation. Like they really weren't prepared. And if you were to be listening to the game without them mentioning, hey, this person scored, or that, like just the discourse of the game, you would think Seattle won that game by 47 points. And they really were not prepared, like to be like, who the fuck is, Alkin Muhammad, okay, him with the sack. Like that's how it was. It was like they were very underprepared to talk about anyone on the Bears because they didn't know any of their names. And it's like, how do you get that opportunity? How do you get that opportunity if you're not going to take it seriously?
And what's funny about that is like you have a first-year head coach, which I would hope they did some research on Matt Eberflus going in. They would know that Al-Quadin Muhammad was like one of the first guys that he brought in of his boys from Indianapolis. You know what I mean? That should be a name that they should be very familiar with. But you're right. Like anytime he popped off, he would be like, oh, Muhammad makes a good play. And then they'd be on the next
one. This is the same guy that called Justin Fields Josh Fields, correct?
Yes. But yeah, that's a whole nother even freaking story. But to kind of pick up off your point though, and this is something that was brought up during the broadcast again to nauseum, was they're playing the Broncos week 1 on Monday Night Football. So it's going to be the Russell Wilson game. So they were even showing the Russell Wilson jerseys on sale and whatnot. So like they were definitely trying to sell that narrative a lot. But
you don't have to shit on the Bears the entire time because it backfired on you. If you would have been like, oh, the Bears are going to be pretty good too this year. I like some of their guys they picked up, like vet minimum guys, and some of the guys we're going to be seeing today. Then you at least cover yourself because if they lose, it doesn't matter. They're probably not going to make the team. If they win, then the shit that you've been trying to sell with the Seattle Seahawks, the NFL is going to sell anyways. I mean, I didn't get to say this last episode, but NFL preseason Saturday did more ratings than fucking the MLB on the same Saturday. So like people are going to watch that game even if Denver wins by 72 points. Like there's no doubt because someone's going to have an alternate over 69.5, hoping to God that there's just fireworks.
Yeah, well, and it comes off as a lot of sour grapes when it comes to Lewis and Riddick, because I really like that you brought up the Roquan Smith situation. Yeah, I can admit that I'm a Roquan Smith guy, but like I can't deny that this has been a bit of a messy situation. But the way they were selling it, they were just taking it that like one or two extra steps. Like it's so funny that they're talking about all this doom and gloom about how Roquan Smith's been demanding a new contract and Ryan Poles, and him and Ryan Poles haven't been on the same page. And they're showing Roquan Smith and he's yakking it up with teammates. Like it's almost like Roquan knew he was being talked about. So he started walking just around every teammate he could, stopping and talking to him and trying to talk to any coaches he could as they're talking about this. And then they show what kills me, and this is the best part of the entire thing to show how bad this was, is they show Sean Desai and Roquan Smith meeting on the field before the game. And they say Sean Desai is Ryan Poles. Like it was like one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. It's like, just tell us you were not prepared for this. Because it almost makes you think that once they went up to Ryan Poles, shooting up in the booth as he's sitting on his phone and drinking a water, whatever the hell he's doing, they would probably hit that moment like, oh, wait, that's not the guy from the pregame. And it's like, oh, yeah, we're complete and utter hacks. Like that's it. At that point, it was just laughable. But it's just irritating that they have the voice, or they have the ears of like a national media and a national audience, and they're gonna just paint so much damn doom and gloom about the entire situation with Roquan Smith, when we're at the point now, Lucas, even moving forward, like Roquan Smith's back at practice. His teammates are loving it. I guarantee his coaches are loving it. Like he seems like a guy who's ready to bet on himself once again. So I mean, like, it's so easy for them to look for that story, but at the same time, like, they took it just a few steps too far.
I've never seen someone get crucified. I'll preface it with this: Roquan needed an agent. Probably was very bad for the situation in general that he did not have an agent. But I have never seen anyone get crucified for holding in from national media and the fan base, like as a whole. Like absolutely everyone. There was a poll that came out. Did Ryan Poles handle the situation well with Roquan Smith? And like was heavily outweighed for yes. I'm just like, I've never seen someone that was at every single meeting, didn't do anything. That video, like I didn't even know this, but Duke informed me the video of him the day he missed practice. Actually, there was a video of him like taking champagne on a boat with a bunch of chicks and like at a boat party, whatever. That was fucking from the summer before. Like I had no idea. I'm sure everyone thought it was from that day. I'm sure that's part of why they have this built-in notion, like that's like Roquan's a piece of shit. But like, bro, like I just have like he did everything that you would want from a player that's just trying to get paid. It's not like he's in his third year being like, fuck you guys, I need more money, I'm contributing more than whatever. No, dude, he is literally in the last year of his contract. Tell me how that is not common practice to have people in the last year of their contract pushing for an extension. I don't care if the regime is new or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't give a shit about any of that. Like, and taking your stuff off social media or saying you're unhappy about it. Like that is so normal in terms of negotiating tactics. Like, why is it okay for an agent to do that, but not for Roquan? So I just feel like a lot of people have had a bad taste in their mouth about him recently. A lot of rumors, a lot of different shit. People were bringing up the car thing from years ago when he mysteriously missed a game, and you know what I mean? Like, just like all this stuff came back out, and it's just weird that people come to the defense of an organization that has done nothing good for them in their lifetimes for the most part. So, that's I guess the last I have to say about that, but it's incredible that he's back. It's going to change the face of the way this defense works and the way the team works. And I'm actually like, with the addition of Tevin Jenkins moving inside, at least believing that Lucas Patrick is going to be back playing center, Cody Whitehair there, Braxton Jones looking pretty promising. It looks like Larry Borum's going to be the starting right tackle, like cooking with grease. Like Cole Kmet too. We didn't talk about this pre-show. Should probably bring it up. Like, he is going to fucking explode this year. We've talked about it before, but I think people, and you even said it, I want to say either in the space or in our pregame, the show before, like you were talking about how you wanted to see his early down work. We saw it very clearly. A tight end screen for 20 fucking yards, and then like a quick 35-yard bomb, sit down. I mean, dude, like I think he is going to quite possibly eclipse, I don't even want to say 1,000, but like, let's say 850 yards. I think he's truly like, especially in this offense and the way he's being used. I think if he has the same amount of catches, which was like 60 as last year, he's going to up his average by like 1.5 yards. And I think he could eclipse that 850 yard mark, no problem. And then in terms of like touchdown or a red zone, targets and stuff like that, obviously that number is going to change. It's going to be hard to tell people, hey, Cole Kmet's a sleeper in a draft. But if you're in a national audience and you're drafting with people for fantasy from like California, and they think the Bears going to be dog shit, like you're going to scoop him up in the 12th round, and he's going to produce as a top 5 tight end, in my opinion. Like, I truly think he's going to have that type of output. Everyone talked about how he can't get fucking separation. No one got separation in that goddamn terrible offense. Can't get separation. Can't make plays after the ball. Literally his first 2 plays. Catch a fucking screen, take it for 20 yards, and then catch it completely wide open, running down fucking the middle of the field, making a great catch. And even the drops portion too. You know what I mean? Like he never dropped a ball at Notre Dame. You think being unsure of the system and unsure of yourself in that system isn't going to affect your hands? Like he looks like he's playing with a fucking swagger. So yeah, that's my piece on Cole Kmet. And he's built like a fucking Greek god. So most of the time, I know Dylan's probably listening or he's going to listen at some point. You're upset that he is just the total fucking package. That's the only reason. Well, he did concede defeat on that.
Yeah, Lucas kind of just blew his load for about 10 minutes about Cole Kmet there.
100%.
But
again, if you asked me to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no problem ever doing it. But to kind of drive the point home, this is something I talked about the week before because I know a lot of people were kind of skeptical about how, say, Justin Fields didn't necessarily hit the middle of the field in week 1. The offense didn't really look like it opened up in the series that they played or the first quarter that they played. But this right here was the absolute proof that it was because they did not have that target in the middle of the field in Cole Kmet. Because you see how much the offense completely opened up the second that Cole Kmet was pushed into this offense. The routes on the outside of the wide receivers were still there, but the seam was open. The seam was wide open because the second that they started going to the wide receivers to the outside, it's like the Seattle Seahawks completely forgot about Cole Kmet over the middle of the field. And that's going to start biting teams really fucking hard, dude, because Cole Kmet is that type of weapon in the middle of the field. He opens up the offense completely. Justin Fields uses him as a safety valve. Like this is stuff that I've been saying 2 years now, man. I've been driving this point home that once Cole Kmet is used correctly, this is the type of impact he can have on the team. Because not only can he sit in line and block, he can also shoot out to the slot and be that big body over the middle of the field if you really do want to hit him in the seam down the field. Like he can be that type of player. He can go up and get it. He can fight after the tackle. Like you saw, I'm pretty sure he broke a tackle on one of the bigger plays he made last Thursday, like to get into the red zone.
Like, he was just beating the fuck out of people.
Exactly. Like, and that's what you have to do. That's where Notre Dame had him at his best was they got him the ball in space and let him work. You know, everybody talks about loving fullbacks. Like get a fullback in the middle of the field, 10 yards down the field and see how well that works for you. Because it's going to work pretty fucking well. Because while Cole Kmet's pretty crisp as a route runner, once he gets to look for an open football, and he's pretty good at maneuvering through safeties and linebackers to be able to catch some open space. Once he gets that football in his hand, dude, it's a completely different ball game trying to tackle the fucking guy. Like that is the safety valve for Justin Fields. And I don't think that gets talked about enough because you look around the league and you look at how tight ends can affect an entire offense. Like you look at my boy, Derek Carr, who hasn't necessarily had a number one wide receiver since Amari Cooper got traded, if we're being totally honest. But Darren Waller, but no, listen to me. Just let me make my point here. Darren Waller has allowed that offense to continue to roll. Like Derek Carr finishes with some of the better stats from a quarterback yardage wise and completion percentage wise because he has that tight end in the middle of the field. He has that safety valve and it allows other things to open up on the outside because people have to start worrying about the tight end. And I think Cole Kmet can do that within this offense. And he can also be on the field and not be a liability in the run game, which is just he's a total package, man. And once he's utilized correctly, which we're already starting to see, this entire offense is going to be able to open up. And that's what we saw on Thursday. And I'm thinking if this starting squad plays the entire first half against the Cleveland Browns next week, which they are slated to do, according to Matt Eberflus, we can really see this offense pop off and we can really start seeing performances from our potential starting wide receivers, like say the Byron Pringles and the Ecnemary St. Browns of the world, potentially even Avalis Jones, seeing what his bigger role is, because once we get Cole Kmet going in the middle of the field, the sky's the limit for this offense.
Yeah. We didn't even have Avalis Jones on the docket, but maybe we could touch a little bit on him as well. Just a closing thought on Cole Kmet in general. I mean, think about Darren Waller. He was at an absolute nobody until he had a crazy training camp where you were hearing murmurs about he's going to be a really good player, and then he became a national sensation. Both guys, 6'6", big fucking bodied over the middle of the field. I think Cole Kmet's 262 and Darren Waller's 255 or something like that. So I will say Darren Waller's a bit better of a route runner in general. He does run routes like a wide receiver, but like you're looking at the matchup nightmares in general. There's not a linebacker that's going to be able to cover him one-on-one. They're going to have to zone him. If he gets into the zone, it's going to be hard to bring him down. He's going to be very good. And even when you make that comparison with like Derek Carr not having, I mean, Derek Carr had a slot receiver and a fucking tight end for like ever, a couple years. Henry Ruggs isn't a true number one. You know what I mean? Like he definitely took the top off, but I'd rather have Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet or Darren Waller. Like Darnell Mooney's a better receiver than him, point blank period.
So we never even got to see the true potential of Henry Ruggs. We only got to see flashes, and the year he started to go off is when that all unfortunately happened for him. And like even like they tried getting him Antonio Brown, like, and that just never even had a chance to take off. Like a great tight end can do that. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of impact it can have. Like I don't want to just sit here and suck Cole Kmet dry. Like I could, but like that's the type of impact he can have on an entire offense, because when you're able to do that, dude, it's just math. They're going to put more guys in the middle of the field and you're going to have more outside options. Like in Darnell Mooney getting one-on-one coverage, that bodes insanely well because he has the speed to be able to get separation, whether it's running a post, a flag, or just a straight streak. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And really you really only do need two like main targets, right? So if your second target is your tight end, it's not a big deal, because say you do have two, like Cole Kmet breaks out, he's everything you want to be. You're not going to really just man up Darnell Mooney unless he's going against one of the better cornerbacks, and then even then he's gonna win some of those battles. We saw it with Jalen Ramsey. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. But if you really look at it, like if you really wanted to take away their options or their best options, if you double fucking Darnell Mooney and you double Cole Kmet, then you're leaving Pringle there. We've seen Pringle and what he can do. He's a solid ass playmaker and receiver, being even the fourth option. So imagine him as the third option. And I'm not saying Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are comparing Darnell Mooney to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but when you think about it matchup wise, if they really did want to double these two or rotate zones in Cole Kmet's favor and in Darnell Mooney's favor, we already know Byron Pringle could take advantage of those opportunities, and that's probably what they were thinking with those with that signing in particular, and why I wanted him for so long. So, let's just move into Velus Jones really quick too. Only thing I'll really say, really brief. We didn't see a ton of it. He's a unfinished product, but you can feel his athleticism and his speed, and it's not like you feel it like John Ross. Like he plays just as fast as his 40 time, and he is built like a fucking horse, dude. Like straight up, in multiple ways. I'm not going to even digress too far, but he's literally a fucking like monster. You can tell he can hit. He muffed his first punt or fumbled, whatever. It's his first NFL hit, but I do think like you felt right away in terms of the return game, both punting and kick returning. Like he's the best option, no doubt about it. You only had to see one fucking return or two returns to really validate that, and you could just feel it, man. He's moving at a different speed than anyone else, and you have to hope that Getsy's able to kind of hone him in similar to a Devontae Adams and really kind of work out some of the rough spots, because he's got a piece of marble to work with, and you could try to hope to he chisels out something that's really nice.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the point. He's a piece of marble for sure, like a beautiful piece of marble, a lot of potential there. You can build an incredible statue out of that, but it is definitely going to take a little bit of time. Like you could see a little bit of his rawness when he was on the field as a receiver, but like his athleticism is just like you said, dude. It's so obvious, and he plays
football player too. It's not like just I'm a fast guy. Like he looks like a fucking football player.
Yeah, no, he definitely has a size. I mean, it's all going to be about learning the NFL route tree, and it's all going to be how he fits into the Luke Getsy system, and being able to get a guy like Luke Getsy, who has really made chicken salad out of chicken shit with a lot of receivers up in Green Bay, and kind of getting a chance to mold him into what you want him to be. Like, obviously, people want him because he's 25 years old. They want him to be able to jump right out of the gun. But like, I think this season, even getting consistent contributions from him in the special teams game and allowing him to really set up really good field position for us is going to be a really positive thing. And I think him getting a chance to work out of the slot or even be that occasional, home run hitter on the outside late, like third quarter games, when the defense isn't quite expecting it, like that can be something that can really bode well. Like it's going to be a lot of seeing what he can do and getting separation down the field, and a lot of getting him the ball in space and allowing him to work, because he has that speed that if he can get separation from cornerbacks down the field, he can be a home run hitter. Like, and that's something that we really haven't had since Turbo Taylor, you know what I mean? If we're being totally honest, Darnell Mooney obviously is our home run hitter now, but being able to have two guys on the outside to potentially work like that could be something that could bode really well for a guy who just happens to throw an incredible deep ball in Justin Fields. But I
And
think a
space
lot
down the field is important too, but like that's another thing. If you get him spaced 5 yards down the field on the screen, like we've already seen him, then you turn into a returner. So he's a bit more of a weapon than Gabriel can be as well.
Yeah, well, that's going to be where it really kind of gets into just getting him the ball in space. I think those are his two biggest roles that he can take on besides special teams this season in this offense is being that guy to be able to get on like even a wide receiver screen and trying to see what he can do, getting him in a slant route in the slot, being able to get him in open space to be able to run downfield and being able to see what he can do downfield. Because like I said, man, being able to have that home run hitter sets up a lot on offense. And that sets up a lot for even our guy, Cole Kmet, or even a running back out of the backfield, because you'll start having safeties play back a little bit more when Velus Jones and Darnell Mooney are both on the field. Obviously he doesn't give you the 6'3" body or anything like that, but speed kills, man. And defense coordinators do not want to get burnt deep, and they will play back just on that alone. So, but I really liked what he did in the return game, man. I think that's something that we were all a little worried about with, losing both Jakeem Grant and Cordell Patterson the year before, of what we were going to kind of do to address that. That's kind of how Daz Newsome was looking to earn a spot on the roster. Obviously that didn't happen because, you just can't muff punts if you're going to be a punt returner. And that's the only way you're going to earn your spot on the offense or on the team. But I thought Velus Jones looked really good. I'm really excited to see what he does moving forward. I think he's going to be your number one option on punt returns, and probably kick returns, depending on what they want to do there. I know.
I don't see how there's no one else above him in terms of your returner. There's no way.
Yeah, no, as it stands right now, absolutely not. It's as long as Velus can be safe with the football, that's 100% it, because he has every other tool in the toolbox when it comes to returning kicks. But kind of moving forward though, another guy that kind of showed out to me in that game was Dominique Robinson. I think he's a guy who's being very undervalued throughout this entire process. He's actually somebody, even when we were shitting on the ESPN guys, they actually gave him a little bit of a second when he made a good play. Because of course ESPN loves those conversion guys, those guys that played one position and they converted to another position in the NFL or in college or whatever. But he's a guy that is just.
I've been high on him for a while now,
dude. The coaching staff is really high on him as well, man. Like you have Travis Smith, defensive line coach for the Bears. He's been talking about he just said the other day, Dom has done a great job for a guy that has really only played one defensive end for a year. He's very sharp and he picks things up fast. Our hits principle that Coach Eberflus and Ryan Poles want hustle, effort, intensity. It's been natural for him. He set the standard running to the ball, finishing to the ball, playing relentlessly. He's been awesome so far. And that's a pretty rave review, man, especially for a guy who was a 5th round pick. Like you have to remember, like top 4 rounds are probably always going to make the roster, but once it gets to 5th, 6th, 7th, that's where it gets a little hazy. And especially for like a project guy that Dominique Robinson, I feel like a lot of us were kind of mollywopped when we drafted him, as like, okay, good athlete, but like, is this somebody that we're really getting in the 5th round? But it seems like he's been as good as advertised, and he's really been impressive, especially on the edge rushing in the preseason, man. He can definitely be a situational pass rusher for his athleticism, size, and speed. And I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table in the regular season.
I like him a lot, man. That's one thing I got to give Poles credit for. Like the people he is drafting at the positions they're being drafted, they look like they're supposed to be playing that position. Like Braxton Jones looks like an offensive tackle. Dominique Robinson looks like a defensive end. Velus Jones Jr. looks like a fucking a football playing wide receiver, like a meaty wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like he's getting guys that are really hitting different traits. I feel like size was not something that Pace was really into. I think he was really high on like 3-cone and shit like that, certain metrics. But I feel like he, in terms of size, like he would range all over. And really typically on the smaller side for offensive linemen too. So, or not offensive linemen, just in general, wide receivers, offensive players, like a lot of those guys were smaller. But yeah, I mean, you could even go to the other end without Ali. It's Ali Quinn Muhammad, correct?
It's Al. All right, hold on. It's Al-Quid, I believe.
Al-Quid. I apologize.
Al-Quadin Muhammad.
I don't want to keep butchering that. Al-Quadin Muhammad. I'm not going to be like the ESPN broadcast guys, but it's not an easy name. But he looks, I mean, he's been solid. Like for a signing that was not for that much money, he came from the Flus defense with the Colts. Like he has been pretty damn solid. And I thought he was just going to be a run support type guy, specialist. You bring Quinn in his spot when it's time to pass rush, shit like that. Like, no, I think he's a 3-down player at this point. He's been really nice, and I know you wanted to highlight him. Is there anything in particular?
Yeah, no. I brought him up a little bit when
Yeah, you did.
broadcast wasn't kind of discussing him, but I guess if I could take a more like more honed in approach, he genuinely just looks like a guy who belongs on the field. Like it's going to be really hard to take him off it. I'm really interested to see what the rotations are once we get into week 1, probably even like going into this final game. I really want to see who's the defensive ends on early downs, who's the defensive ends in pass rushing situations, because I think Al-Quadin is just so solid at everything. Maybe he's not necessarily elite as a pass rusher or or something like that, but like he's a guy who, when he's out there, you're not worried about what he's doing on the play. You know what I mean? Whether he gets to the quarterback or not, you are almost going to think he's at least going to get a pressure or a good pass rush in. I really like his outside move and his swim move. I think those are his 2 strengths as far as that. And obviously, even for just being a guy who's 6'3", 250, that's not necessarily size that like sticks out at you. He's a guy who is surprisingly stout in the run game as well. I think it's going to bode very well, and I think a guy like Matt Eberflus is really going to enjoy having fresh bodies on the edge rushers in a guy like Muhammad, and a guy like Robinson, and a guy like Trevis Gibson and Robert Quinn. Like, I'm really interested to see how those rotations work, because with how Robinson's been playing as well, I wouldn't be surprised if he started getting used situationally early on in the season. You know what I mean? Like, because if he's a speed guy who can get to the edge, man, like that's something you just got to use, and you got to keep trying to build off that if he's going to be a potential long-term piece or not, and I think it's still up in the air with Robert Quinn, what's going to happen at the trade deadline. Obviously, he's going to be the starter week 1. There's no doubt about that, and he'll probably get the majority of snaps, but I'm really interested to see on what the rotation is with Muhammad, Gibson, Robinson, and Quinn. I think it's just going to be nice because we're going to have fresh bodies out there, and that's going to be something we really haven't had the leisure of the past few seasons. When you think about having Khalil Mack out there every single down, or having
you always get lost at the worst time too, right?
Yeah, and even like a few years prior when we still had Leonard Floyd, like using him to the absolute core, you know what I mean? Like he didn't get to leave the field.
91% of snaps and shit. That is so unusual for an outside linebacker. Like,
exactly. Especially in a 3-4 system where you're rushing the passer most of the time.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact stat, but I believe Eberflus's defense in terms of defensive line rotation was at the top of the league for how often they would sub people. So yeah, being deep there and having players that can all contribute, like we talked about Coley, I truly think he's going to make a push for not a starting position, like a backup one technique, like come in behind Tonga, who I know you want to talk about as well, but like, you look at it and it's like, we've seen this defense, and I believe they went 5 quarters with the second half of the Chiefs game and the first 3 quarters of the Seahawks game where they did not let up a touchdown. Like, we're talking 5 quarters of really good defensive football. And they went against the ones with Seattle, right? Like, you could say, oh, okay, it's the backups that shut out the backups in Kansas City, which realistically, Kansas City should have a deeper roster and a more competitive, deeper roster than the Chicago Bears. So I think like what we're seeing from this preseason is the floor has been raised. Maybe the ceiling has not been raised in terms of the starters, but the floor has been raised to the point where I do think there is a bit of a solid foundation moving forward. Especially with some of these young guys on really cheap contracts. So you think of a rotation with like Robinson, Coley, like we haven't seen Roquan Smith in this defense. We haven't seen Robert Quinn in this defense. Brisker wasn't playing like we've seen a lot of not, and that's normal for preseason. We haven't seen the whole starting defense playing together. And I think it really could become a top 10 defense this year. Like, I truly believe it could be, because they lost some talent, but they also regained some talent in some other places. And yeah, I mean, maybe we should just jump right into Tonga then.
Well, no, even just to kind of pick up off that point, like I think that's just kind of the key to success. I think a lot of people are really gung ho about being like the top unit or like the top 5 unit. But like, if you can find balance on both offense and defense where you're in the top half of the league, chances are you're going to be in most every ball game that you're going to play. Like, obviously if you're playing the team that has the top offense and the top 5 defense, yeah, you're probably gonna get mollywopped, but like it's not gonna be to the point where like, wow, you're getting it completely outclassed. It's gonna be like, all right, you lost, but like you're still in this game. Like people lose sight of how much balance can really play a role in this. And I really feel like that's a big part of like, even when we were talking about Roquan Smith and everybody kind of trashing him, I feel like that's where they're going to find his value again, is seeing what a good defense can add to the offense. You know what I mean? But yeah, kind of jumping in on my guy, Kyrus Tonga. Once again, dude, just doing everything you're asking of him up front, just not letting any running lanes open up. Like he has like a 52 speed on Madden, which I think is just absolutely atrocious, because he plays so much faster than he looks like. And even this year, man, I think he's put down at least 20 pounds in fat and at least gained like 10 in muscle, just with the way his build is. Like you saw him at training camp, man.
No,
that did not look like you're
way trimmer than he was as a rookie. Like he looks like he put in that fucking work.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like he always looked like he had that natural ability. It was all about like kind of like, hey, don't Eddie Lacy this, like take care of your body, you know what I mean? But
I forgot about Cheeseburger Eddie, dude.
I always do until I talk to a Packer fan when they talk about running backs.
He had a year or two where he was really fucking good, but then it just went downhill fast.
Dude, once he showed up to, I think it was the second year, like 20 pounds heavier, like everyone was still really excited about him. It's like, man, if he doesn't get this going in like a year or two, like he's going to be out of the fucking league. And sure enough. But yeah, dude, I mean, 6'4", 338, and can do a little bit of everything up front, man. He's a big fucking boy, and he stuck out a lot, man. He played a lot of snaps on defense on Thursday, and I expect him to play a lot of snaps moving forward. He was a guy I remember when we originally, quote unquote, signed Larry Ogunjobi, that he was the guy that I kind of had placing next to him. And a lot of Bears fans gave me a lot of flack for that. They're like, Kyrus Tonga, like, we don't even know if he's going to make the team. Like we want Justin Jones. We want these other guys. And it's like, it's really good to have depth at that position for sure. But like Kyrus Tonga's talent shows. And it's obvious that the defensive line coaches, it's very obvious that Matt Eberflus are pretty damn bullish on Kyrus Tonga. And it shows with the snap count. It shows how much he's been working with the ones. They have been doing a pretty steady rotation, but early downs, first and second down, it's almost always Kyrus Tonga up front, which bodes really well for this defense, because I think he has a chance to have a breakout type year. I always think of, say, like our boy Eddie Goldman early on in his career, when we were originally playing a 4-3 defense. I think that's the type of season he can have, because he does have a little bit of a pass rush edge to him as well. You know what I mean? He hasn't been quite asked to do that quite yet, but like once you get him to really work into the third, fourth quarter of just going at the same guard center combo the entire game, he's gonna win some of those battles in pass rushing situations, whether it's on second down or not. And I would not be surprised at all if he ended with like 5.5 sacks. Personally, I really think he can hit that number while still being solid in the run game.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying about Coley. Like his stat, like playing a one technique in a 4-3, you're not going to be a stat pattern unless you're an elite level player. Like you are there serving a very specific purpose, and that's to fucking destroy that A gap every single play. Like that is your job. And if something comes to the A gap, or if your defensive end, Dominique Robinson, say, or Robert Quinn is pushing that shit inside, then yeah, you're going to get some tackles that game, like, or whatever. But personally, I believe like Kyrus Tonga, or that Coley stat I was just saying, like he had 2 tackles. One of them was a sack. One was a TFL. Like that is a very good stat line for a fucking one technique, especially if they are consistently destroying that A gap, because it fucks everything up for the offense. Look at every great quarterback ever. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, does not matter who it is. Great quarterbacks can step up in the pocket and manipulate the pocket. But when you destroy the inside of the pocket, it's over. And a lot of times guys get stats because they are winning their one-on-one matchup or winning their matchup and getting there, but it is that guy in the inside. And this is, you were talking about how you were a fat kid. I was always a nose. I was always someone that just absolutely got my shit rocked just tried to stay in my fucking gap. You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those things. It's a very ungratifying position, and he does it really well, and he makes it look fucking cool. So, yeah, there's no one that's even close on the roster that's going to even – I was on board with that Tonga take. I didn't realize you were getting a lot of backlash from it, but like, yeah, I knew right away, like he's a gap shooter. That was his biggest issue, to play in a 3-4. And now that's all they're asking him to do is fill that gap.
Well, I posted that tweet with Ogunjobi and Tonga, and I was talking about how good our front was going to be this year. And like every reply I got was like, what's Tonga doing in there? And like, I'm like, listen, man, that's just a guy who I'll never forget him playing Wisconsin against BYU and me just being enamored with this fucking guy. I'm like, this guy is gigantic. He's far too explosive for how big he is. Like, he should be this guy that stands up and plays fucking patty cakes with his tits, but he's not, man. He is an athlete. It was hidden under a lot of tub there, but he's worked that out, man. And I really think he can be that type of impact player. You know, when you were talking about like what you want from the interior defensive lineman, is like, dude, think of like a Vita Vea in fucking Tampa and how much he adds to the pass rushers on the outside, and even saying Ndamukong Suh, or I'm assuming is going to be an Akeem Hicks as well this season on the opposite side of him. Like, he adds so much just by wreaking havoc inside for everybody else. Like my buddy Jake, actually, when we were in high school, that's the position he played, dude. And he was a small little guy, but he just wreaked fucking havoc inside and just opened everything up for the pass rush. And that's something that type of guy can do.
Think of it too, man. If you are getting constantly abused in between that guard and center A gap and the one technique, like if you are constantly getting abused there, you're going to have to shift protection towards the inside. And then guys like Robert Quinn and fucking Travis Gibson, who has proven to have a pretty damn good speed rush. Robert Quinn may have the best speed rush in the game. Von Miller, obviously, you know, he's elite, but like Robert Quinn is one of those guys. They even said it in his top 100. Heavily fucking slept on every single year. So if you're destroying the interior of that, then they have to shift in. Then they have to bring in tight ends. They're not able to run as many routes. Now you have guys like Jaquan Brisker coming in on blitzes. Like it changes the game. So people don't understand, like, with those ungratifying positions, and everyone always talks about it starts up front. And that's what they mean. Like, it really does. It forces you to do things that you don't want to do as an offense. So yeah, no, Tonga's the fucking man. You're never going to hear anything different from me.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so we are kind of hovering a little tight on time. There are a couple guys I didn't really bring up. Kyler Gordon, I feel like, is the top one I didn't bring up. I mean, obviously we could probably go into that pretty deep, but I kind of want to see what he does against Cleveland Browns before I really kind of go nuts. I thought he had a really hot and cold game personally, but his talent is obvious every time you see him on the field. It's just going to be getting used to that slot corner position, which is something he's done in the past in college. So I'm hoping he adjusts to that. Obviously Jack Sanborn, another great game out of him. Got raved. The coaches raved about him again, finished with like 7 tackles, 5 solo. Looks like even if he's not a starter or even a second team guy, he's 100% going to start the season on special teams. Like I don't remember a punt so far this preseason where I haven't seen Jack Sanborn be either the first or second guy down the field. And that's incredibly impressive. So, and then really outside of that, like it's kind of hard to really dive too deep. I mean, unless you have like a name or two that you can think of off the top of your head, Lucas.
No, not a name or two, just some general notes.
Well, because we were talking about it before the show started, like it's hard to really dictate what we're gonna do against Cleveland because we don't quite know what Cleveland's gonna do yet. You know what I mean? Like how often are they gonna play their starters? Like obviously, it sounds like we're gonna play our starters the first half. Seems like that's kind of the idea around the league, but coaches make change their mind, make different decisions at the last second. So it's really kind of hard to dictate matchup wise. But who is somebody? I guess if I can ask you.
I got something because I wanted to have a couple closing thoughts about the previous game or just the team in general. So yeah, doing a Cleveland preview. You'll get a preview next week about their first actual real fucking regular season game or in 2 weeks from now. So that we'll save it for that and talk about matchups and shit. But overall, I mean, you look at this team, they have only committed, I want to say 4 penalties over 2 games, which is fucking astounding for how many of these guys that are playing aren't going to make the team. Came as UDFAs, came as late round draft picks, came as fucking pickups from, you know what I mean? Like from all over the place. So that underestimate the fact that the talent level on teams really is not that different. Obviously, we know the elite teams, the Buffalo Bills, the guys that have starters 1 through 22, where you're like, there's not many question marks there. Like you got some solid guys, and then you got some elite players. But when you look at the rest of the NFL, there's not that much of a talent difference. And not committing penalties and making mistakes and compounding those mistakes, which it looks like the Bears are pretty fucking good at coaching that out of players right now. They've also acquired some players that didn't get penalized in college, a lot in college as well. I think that plays into it. But like not committing those mistakes changes games that are 31-14 to 17-14. And you know what changes a game from 17-14 to 21-14? Guys making a couple plays. So that's one thing I feel like I really put out there with that one thread. Like, I don't see this team at any point just getting blown out week after week. Like, I think if they lose games, they're going to be one-score games. Like, yeah, they're going to have a couple blowouts for sure. They're not that top end of a talented team. Green Bay will probably get the better of us once. The Buffalo Bills are a pretty fucking elite team until, they show themselves as being human, but it looks like they're rising. Like, I just think in general, like that is so huge and something that really needs to go notice. And then one fun fact that was actually from Kevin Fishbane from The Athletic. The Bears are 2-0 in the preseason. The last time they went undefeated in the preseason. This is the most important thing about the Cleveland game. The last time that they went undefeated in the preseason was 1994, and they made the playoffs that year. I always said, if we're overshooting expectations and we're really happy about what's going on, if Justin Fields takes that step forward, if Cole Kmet takes that step forward, if some of these young guys really do emerge, a realistic goal is getting that 7 seed in the wild card. NFC is not that strong. Most of the elite quarterbacks are in the AFC. Like, I do think, like, hey, man, let's look at this last win and let history repeat itself, because we know it does.
Well, NFC is a very top heavy division. Like, if we're taking a real glance at it, like there are some heavy hitters at the very top, but once it hovers down to like the NFC East guys of the world, or like,
the Cowboys are always the best 8-8 team in the world. The Eagles are always overhyped. The Vikings are always over fucking hyped. The Lions are always the Lions, right? Like,
yeah. And I mean, like, I really do want to dive into this before we go into week one, because I do have a lot of predictions, and I feel like my predictions are really on the realistic side of things without being like negative or anything like that. But I'm just not going to buy into the fact that this is only a 4-win team. And honestly, and we know exactly who we're talking about when we say this, but like, people who want to bring up the fact that, oh, if so-and-so gets injured, what are they going to do? Like, then they're totally fucked or anything like that. And like, this is year one of Matt Eberflus, man. Like, this is what shows if you're a coach who belongs in the NFL or not. And I say this term, I already said it on this podcast, I'm going to say it until the end of time. Can you make chicken salad out of chicken shit? If somebody goes down, what the hell are you going to do about it? Like, are you just going to decide, oh, well, we're fucked at this position now? Like, well, what are we going to do? No, you have to be able to adjust. Like, how does Luke Getsy show that he can bring out the best 5 offensive linemen out there every single week and have the best wide receiving pair, regardless of who gets injured? Like if Darnell Mooney goes down, how is Luke Getsy going to decide we're going to move the football? If David Montgomery goes down, how are we going to decide we're going to move the football? Like, these are all real questions that sure every team's going to have with their star players, but at the same time, like, you have to be able to adjust. So that's going to be my number one thing with this team, is just seeing how you're able to adjust on the fly. But anyway, I think, unless you really have anything else, I think that's about where we should leave it. We will be back next week to clean up after the Cleveland game, play after we finish up playing the Cleveland Steamers, of course. And we will start working our way into week one, and potentially, don't quote us on this, but potentially working into a new schedule as well. But anyway, this has been Barely There. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke. I'm always joined by Lucas Freddy. You can follow him at LucasFreddy46. First, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Barely There Pod. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe anywhere you want to listen to us on a podcast form. We love talking to you guys. Love the chat today. And bear down. We're 1 week closer.
Yeah, bear down. Last closing note. Mike Martz is a fat slob. He trashed the Bears up and down and talked about how dog shit they were going to be. You traded Greg Olsen for nothing. You literally said you were not going to play that man. So he got traded for a bag of fucking chips and had a Hall of Fame career. You're overrated. You had 2 very, very high caliber fucking wide receivers. One of the better fucking running backs in the history of the NFL, and the best story ever at quarterback, becoming a Hall of Famer, all making your system work. You did not make them work. And that's my closing thought.
You're a fucking disgrace. Tell Martz I say fuck him.
Yeah.
Bear down.
That's it. Peace.